Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the miracle stories that are happening right here in our own city, in our own state, every day. My name is Tony Kausha, and the title of our show is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. Please note, this show is not about religion, and we're not trying to change anyone's religion, and we're not trying to get you to join any religion. It's just about miracle stories. I don't know of any religion on the planet that doesn't talk about miracles. That's why religions begin, because they have something that's telling them there's really a God. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to just talk about miracles and leave the decisions about all that up to you. So we don't care what religion you are. We just want to talk about miracles. If you are an atheist, I think you'll enjoy the program as well, although I can't guarantee you'll remain an atheist very long after you hear many convincing stories, coincidence kinds of stories about miracles. You can email me your own stories if you wish. We'll try to use all we can on the show. I can't guarantee we will, depending on volume and time, but you're welcome to send your stories on to us, and we will mention them when we can. You can send them to the following email address. But please notice that if we do use your story, we won't mention your name. We'll keep you anonymous. And we suggest that in your story, when you send it to us, don't use your correct name. That way anyone listening will not be able to figure out that it was you that sent the story in. The email address you can send your stories to is very easy to remember. It consists of 2 words and 3 numbers. The first word is Tony, spelled Tony, and the second word is and, spelled A-N-D, and the numbers are 777. So once again, the name is Tony and 777 at AOL.com. Well, let us begin. Our first sharing today, again, shows how God puts ideas into our mind. We get inspirations, sudden thoughts just pop into our head, and we could be inclined to think that we are thinking these thoughts ourselves. You know, you're just walking along and you get some idea. You start thinking of something like a summer vacation, or you want to call somebody on the phone, or you should change your shoes or change your tie. You get a thought, it just pops into your head. And you could be inclined to think that that's you, that's your brain and your mind doing that. But very often, if we pay attention to the things that pop into our head, very often it's God speaking to us. So the first thing I'm going to share with you today is very convincing, especially if it happened to you. I had a drive, about a 2.5-hour drive recently, and as I was driving, I had this thought in my mind about a wonderful lecture I had given in Greenwich, Connecticut a couple of years ago. Very well attended, and several miracles happened right there during the lecture, and many people were touched by the lecture. And we sold a tremendous amount of books also after the lecture. We had a book signing as well. So it was extremely successful, and I was so delighted. It's nice to do something like that, trying to convince people they can talk to God and having it become very successful. And so that was one of the successful times. I've had some that were not so successful, but I was kind of enjoying this momentary reminder of, it just popped into my head. I was thinking about it. And then suddenly I looked at the dashboard and I saw that the time on the clock was exactly the same time that a great miracle had happened at that Greenwich meeting. You might have heard about it on prior recordings, but at 10:42 in the morning, exactly 10:42 in the morning, there was a miracle in the midst of my lecture. And now while I was thinking about it, I looked at my clock on the dashboard, and it was exactly 10:42. So the significance of this story is that God had put that idea into my head while I was driving to think about the Greenwich Miracle that happened at 10:42, and I was enjoying that moment, and then God had me notice through the corner of my eye or inspired me to look at the clock to see what time it was, and there it was, 10:42 on the button. And so I hope that convinces you that God does do these things, puts ideas into our head. And the second thing that happened to me that day was at the end of the day, I was inspired to go to the diary of Saint Faustina. She's a Polish saint in the 1930s, and she's been canonized after that, of course, but a Polish saint, Saint Faustina. And she, if you read her diary, she was talking to God and hearing God talk to her when she was something like 5 or 6 years old. So it's a wonderful diary. She becomes a nun in a cloistered order. She's shut away from the rest of the world, and her diary is all of her well, not all of, but a tremendous amount of daily conversations with God, what she says to God and what God says to her. Tremendous diary. So one night, on this particular night, after that Greenwich story, I was inspired before bed to take her diary and read a few pages before bedtime. And it was an exciting and wonderful moment for me because I just, go to the next page. I've been reading the diary for a while. I read 1 page or 2 pages at a time over time. And I've been reading it now for the past year. So, I'm still not finished with it. But on this particular day, I opened to the next paragraph to read. And I found that she, St. Faustina, used to talk about being with, in, and through God. Acting, doing things with God, in God, through God. And so she came up with the order of words being with God, then in God, and then through God. So until you can do things through God, in other words, do things with God's power working through you, until you can do that, you have to be with God, and then you have to be inside of God, dwelling within Him like a fish inside of an ocean. Said another way, you can't swim. If you're a fish, you can't swim unless you're in the ocean. So her order of the words was with, in, through Him. And those of you who read the book, my book is called Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. If you read the book, you notice that I came up with weekly letters I used to send out 40 years ago, and we called the letters with, 4 letters, W-I-T-H. We called the letters with, meaning these letters are being done with God, in God, through Him, and the H on the end is Him. And I bring this up because for 40 years now I've been using the order of the words that way, the same way she was, and I didn't know that until this day. But those of you who are familiar with the terms, you know that most of the world uses the order being twin instead of the acronym with. Most people use the acronym TWIN, which is through Him, with Him, and in Him. So it was a glorious moment for me. And as I said earlier, this first miracle story, or both of the first 2 miracle stories, confirmed for us that God does talk to us and put ideas in our mind. He had me look at the clock in the first case to see the 10:42, and now He had me inspired to open up the book to Faustina, and I got this other wonderful miracle. Our next story is from a listener who tells us that he visits his daughter about once every 3 months. They have a visit together, a long one. They go out for lunch or dinner together. And he relates how on a particular day, and I'm excited about this because he read our book, and he knows about the meaning of numbers, and he knows about the meaning of letters. And so he's telling us that when he arrived at his daughter's house to pick her up, the last stop sign before her house, a car passed in front of him with a license plate which had the letter G for God, the letter G 3 times. So there was 3 G's. And he relates to us that, that's the 7th letter in the alphabet. And so that reminded him of 3 sevens, which is God's number. And then later that night, after he dropped his daughter off and he was leaving, he came to the same intersection, identical same intersection, same stop sign, and a car in front of him coming toward him had a license plate number 444. And that number is the reminder, and we explain all the numbers in my book, but the 444 reminds us of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and so the 444 is a very holy number in that regard as well. And then he tells me that when he had dropped his daughter off, there was someone there who was meeting with her husband, and as he dropped his daughter off, he went in and he started to talk to the husband and this other visitor. And while they were talking, another friend came in right at that time while the father was there. And what was so amazing to him was, he saw the 3 G's in the time when he was picking his daughter up. They had a wonderful, delightful dinner together, and they talked about many miracles in their lives, which is a practice they do when they do meet. They talk about miracles. And now that he is dropping his daughter off, a male and a female. He meets the male when he walks in the door, but a female came by to visit, and both of them had the same name, and their name was Chris, C-H-R-I-S. And Chris, is a derivative of the word Christ. So he shared with us how this was all a miraculous thing, that he saw the G's on the way in, which means 3 sevens. He saw the 4s on the way out at the same intersection, which means the Blessed Virgin Mary. And while he was dropping his daughter off, 2 people arrived, and both of them, one male, one female, had the same name. Our next letter is from a listener who also read our book and knows about the meaning of numbers, so it's good it's coming in the same week here. But he shares with us that he had gone to Mass that morning, on the morning he was sharing about, and when he got to Mass and pulled into the parking lot to park his car, he saw a license plate with the letters H, like H for heaven, and he saw 3 H's, all capital H's, 3 H's, H, 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 and that's the 8th letter of the alphabet, and he knows that from our book, and so that tells him it's the number 888, and 3 8 is the number that stands for the name Jesus, the holy name Jesus. And he says at the end of the day, when he was all done with all of the things he was doing, and after work and on the way home, he stopped and picked up some groceries, and just as he was pulling into his driveway, a car coming toward him had a license number 888. So he started out the morning with 3 H's, which is 3 8s, and he ended the day with 3 8s. And 3 8 is the number that means the holy name of Jesus. And so he's sharing with us how he feels God was with him starting his day and also ending his day as well. Our next story is from a listener who has read our books, both books 1 and book 2. They both have the same title, Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. But she relates to us that she was ministering to a friend of hers whose husband had cancer, terminal cancer, and she was ministering to her friend, and she was trying to get people to pray for the husband, not accepting a terminal cancer, but praying for a miracle to happen. And the people that this friend of hers was told by some other people in the church that she attends that there are no more miracles, that all of the miracles stopped at the time that Jesus died, and all the miracles stopped really after the apostles had died, and there haven't been any miracles since. Now, I'm sorry that there are people out there saying that, because that's not true. If you read the lives of the saints, like St. Francis of Assisi, St. Anthony of Padua, St. Padre Pio, St. Catherine Siena, St. Teresa of the Little Flower, St. Teresa Avila, if you read the lives, the stories of those saints, you find that miracles are happening every day. But the bottom line is, since this woman had read both of our books, she got a copy of our book and gave it to her because, in my book, I'm explaining how I've experienced 50,000 miracles in my life. So the great news is our books have done some good. It's convinced people of some truths that we do still get miracles if we ask God for them. The miracles come from God, not from us. God bless you all. I'll talk to you next week.